Trump is wasting no time setting the expectations for his presidency. Peace through strength, progress through threats, and tariffs thrown around on a near constant basis to achieve his goals. It started with Colombia rejecting some illegal immigrants when Trump tried to return them, and so Trump threatened a load of tariffs as a response, and Colombia swiftly backed down. Then came Mexico, whose open border with the US has been a complete disaster, and so the tariffs came out in force again. Mexico then swiftly announced 10,000 soldiers being sent to the border, along with a bunch of other initiatives designed to stop the flow of people and goods across the border illegally. And then came Canada, again with threats of tariffs in response to an open border policy with the US that has seen fentanyl tracked into the US. Once again, Canada is swiftly backing down, promising 10,000 troops to man the border and a bunch of other initiatives as well. When the tariffs for China came through, though, some people might have expected a similar outcome: swift negotiations, political wins for Trump, followed by revoking those tariffs, which had only just been ordered and put into place. But those people would have been wrong, because the game of tariffs is being played very, very differently when it comes to China. These tariffs are here to stay, and they're here to hurt. Now, many people have already explained the broad strokes, what will get hit, what won't, and what that might do to the Chinese economy and the American economy as well. But what nobody is talking about, and what they really should be, is the closure of the de minimis loophole, which was just ordered by Trump, which is set to absolutely decimate a $1 trillion Chinese industry. And the craziest thing about this, literally no one knows about it, but within a few months, they surely will. So in this video, I'm going to explain why this seemingly small loophole is being closed, why it's going to have catastrophic impacts on China's economy, and why it will certainly lead to further escalation in this trade war throughout the next few years. Now, this loophole is called the de minimis exemption, and basically states that there are no tariffs or taxes to be paid when importing goods of value below $800. The idea is simple: if a small business is doing something non-impactful like wood carving on a personal basis, we don't really want to be placing taxes on them. Say a one-man business makes these wood carvings and sells them online. To get them to go and set up those systems, fill out those forms, and pay tariffs on shipping a $100 small object to the US really doesn't make any sense. So tariffs on those goods shouldn't amount to any meaningful quantity, and the amount of goods that small a value being shipped into the US should be incredibly low anyway. At least that was the idea when this rule was put into place years ago. And because businesses used to manufacture in China, then export everything at once to their country of destination, stick it in a big warehouse, and then send each piece off individually to customers, large businesses weren't able to abuse this loophole. But with the massive improvement in online shopping and global logistics, and that is no longer how things work anymore. It's now incredibly cheap and easy for a company based in China, operating purely from China, to find an individual customer in another country and to send an individual package off to that customer without ever having to send goods over in bulk. As a result, over $1 trillion in sales is driven every year in China by exploiting this loophole, skipping out the domestic warehouses, which used to be absolutely vital for selling anything internationally, and get away not only without paying any tariffs that might be applied to their specific goods or industries, but any blanket tariffs that are intended to apply to everything as well. Now, this loophole has existed for a long time, and a bunch of people and advisors actually told the Biden administration in particular that they should be closing the loophole over the last few years, but the administration simply had no ambition or urgency, so it never got done. Now, however, it has been closed by Trump, and it spells disaster for the Chinese economy. Now, if you've ever shopped online for something on a website that looks a little bit like this, home furniture, little bits of decor, trinkets, clothes, consumer goods, or even electronics, the chances are you've been helping these Chinese companies abuse this loophole. If you're searching for a bookshelf to buy online, and a website like Wayfair will always pop up. It looks like any other furniture store. Sure, it has a lot of options, but one you think you'll notice is that these products is incredibly cheap compared to their competitors, and they're always priced below $800. And whilst Wayfair themselves are an American company, the ones actually selling the products on Wayfair are foreign companies, usually based in China. Take a look at the packages that a young woman is going to be buying online, and you'll see other companies like Shein pop up a huge amount. They sell clothes at a ridiculously cheap price. I'm talking literally less than 20% of the price you have to pay to buy anything from a store in person. And again, the way this company works is you place your order, the warehouse in China packages it up and sends it off individually. So even though they're selling more than $60 billion worth of clothes every year at the moment, they're behaving as if they were a small company, and they're not having to pay any foreign tax whatsoever. Now, the impact to companies which aren't based overseas or don't produce their products using slave labor in the west of China, well, they get pushed out of the market. They simply can't compete because they have to play by the rules, and as a result, China has developed a monstrous industry that is dominating the world when it comes to selling consumer goods. Temu is another company that is heavily abusing this practice, so is Alibaba, but there are literally thousands and thousands of these companies all operating in different niches, different industries, abusing this same loophole and making obscene amounts of money in doing so. Now that that loophole is closed, imposed, it's game over for these companies, or at least it's the start of the end. The quality of their products is genuinely atrocious, and some of these companies have even been adopting a scam method called no-ship, where they rely on long delivery times as they're shipping from China to fool people into thinking the product is on its way. And then 6 weeks later, when the product never arrives, they simply rely on the customer forgetting that they'd ever ordered a $78 package worth of clothes in the first place, and they get to keep all of that money while scamming their customers. Now, the only savings grace here for these companies is that Trump is the only person to have taken this action so far, and the de minimis exception is still in place in the vast majority of countries like the UK, like Canada, and like all of Europe. None of these companies, though, really have any business being as successful as they are. Shein is currently seeking to list publicly in the UK purely because they've got a massive presence in the UK market and they lack the legitimacy that they seek, and they think being a UK listed company will give it to them, not because the UK is actually a good market for raising funds. It really isn't. But as a result of their attempt to list publicly, there have been a few inquiries into how Shein is able to sell clothes for such ridiculously cheap prices. Of course, false and fraudulent marketing plays a large role here, but there's also something else going on, and that is China's heavy use of slave labor to keep costs down. The largest market in the world is thriving in China, using Uyghur Muslims as a near free labor source to pick and process that cotton for them whilst they lie imprisoned in internment camps. I don't think it's controversial to say that we certainly shouldn't be allowing Chinese companies to use slave labor to profit and draw wealth away from our countries and companies which make efforts to not use slave labor. Altogether, this Chinese industry that has grown around these loopholes is worth well into the trillions, and their access to the largest and most profitable market in the world, the US, has just basically been switched off. If we see Europe, the UK, Canada, and other countries follow suit, which is seemingly likely, that industry will collapse overnight. Now, obviously, Trump's use of tariffs so far have been incredibly widespread, considering the fact we're not even a month into his presidency, but Trump has pulled back from the tariffs he imposed on 3 separate occasions within just a couple of days' time each time. Colombia ended up accepting those illegal immigrants, so the tariffs were pulled back. Canada and Mexico both agreed to take measures to secure their borders with the US, and so the tariffs against them have been pulled back as well. But China has no such recourse. Those other examples of tariffs being instituted were not tariffs used for the sake of it. They were not attempts to protect American industry or to attack foreign companies. They were political tools used to bring those governments to the negotiating table in a poor position to gain political concessions and to help Trump achieve his political goals. The tariffs against China are distinctly different. They are specifically designed to attack the Chinese economy and to protect the American economy, and so there's no negotiating table that China can sit at and make some concessions to get it all overturned. Sure, if China were to abandon their claims on Taiwan, to institute full democracy, pull back from their neo-colonialism in South America and Africa, Trump would likely be receptive and be willing to pull back some of his tariffs, but that's something the CCP is obviously never going to do. And that means the tariffs are here to stay. It means China will retaliate with tariffs of their own, and Trump will likely push harder and target the Chinese export market even further. And China is, of course, an export-driven economy. Sure, they have a strong domestic market, but with a GDP per capita less than that of literally the poorest countries in Europe, less than Mexico, less than the Dominican Republic and Kazakhstan, it is wealthy only due to the huge population it has. It relies almost entirely on being the workshop of the world, on utilizing its poor labor force to export goods and resources to the rest of the world, and these tariffs will hit incredibly hard. Add on to that the fact that Trump is always a vocal critic of China, that tensions are high regarding Taiwan, and the West is upset with the erasure of human rights and democracy in Hong Kong, with the ethnic cleansing going on against Uyghur Muslims, with no free press, mass censorship, and an aggressively nationalist government. These things are only going to get worse. Now, if you haven't seen my channel or my videos in a while, check to see if you got unsubscribed, because I am back again making content consistently. And if you have some information, some knowledge, or some expertise, and you're interested in the idea of building an online education company, check out the link down below in the description. I have a free guide showing you how you can turn 5 years of experience into a 100K a year online coaching business.